It's hard to fathom, isn't it? This word coming from God to the people, His chosen people. If you have any lepers, make them shout, "Unclean, unclean." Make them live outside the camp. At least this is what people thought they heard God say, and people whose science wasn't quite as good as ours is. But as scientifically, as sophisticated as we are, we still have people that we wrongly call or treat as unclean in some way these days. Who are some of those groups of people? Just shout it out, and hopefully you're not calling it unclean. You're saying we shouldn't call these people unclean. So shout some of those out. Start thinking about it. There's a lot, and I was asking people over the past couple of weeks. I think immigrant was said. I don't know if gay was said. Muslim was said. Christian, in some places, other religions, depending on where you are. Arab, the obese, homeless was said. Poor, veterans, the enemy, women, people of all colors, 50 shades of color. Sadly, we have 50 shades of unclean in our society. And during this Black History Month of February, we celebrate 50 Shades of Black. We remember good and challenging times in Black history, especially for us here in the United States. At the San Diego Black Film Festival a few weeks ago, I saw actually 3 different movies that all touched on the same incident, which I had never even heard of before. The Tulsa race riots of 1921, I think. In fact, they weren't race riots. Normally we think of race riots being the downtrodden race rising up, and calling it riot, maybe puts a label on it. But this was a massacre of white people going to the black side of town and massacring, I think it was 200 blacks. This was including this area that was affluent. They called it the Black Wall Street. And in the same town of Tulsa, Oklahoma, were the killings of just 2 or 3 years ago that I think they call the Black Friday killings. And in between, I saw a beautiful documentary of what happened in between at this one high school in Tulsa during the times of integration of schools. With several false starts, they finally figured out a way to integrate this one high school, which had a long tradition as an all-black high school of excellence in many ways and many things. And then it was difficult for them and difficult for the whites in town to then figure out a way, or even to want to integrate. Well, they figured it out and carry on the rich traditions of this high school. And it was just a beautiful story. I thought I'd look up a little bit of African American history in San Diego. Found a lot of little anecdotes. One thing I found was that the last Mexican governor, that is the last governor of California when California was part of Mexico, was a mixed race man called Pio Pico. Among other anecdotes, I also discovered the story of Mary and Edward Anderson, who at the turn of the century, that is 1897, had bought tickets to the opera downtown, and they weren't allowed to take their orchestra seats. And so they sued. They won an award of $150, which was probably pretty big. And then in appeal, it was taken away from them. So rich history. Here in San Diego, a lot of African Americans came to San Diego around and because of involvement in the military in Second World War. So a rich history. Now, African Americans, I believe, blacks, I believe especially African Americans, have been harnessed with that terrible N-word label, which, although I won't argue with blacks who use that as an in-your-face, okay, we're going to take that label and celebrate it, I won't argue with that as a possibility. It's something that I think still for a lot of African Americans is a label that is felt and even internalized. And the reason why I thought of this is because of this call for the lepers to yell, unclean, unclean. It's like their label, and sometimes themselves, African Americans, calling out, unclean, unclean. African Americans, like these lepers of the Israelites, have in so many ways been sent outside the camp over the years to live in ghettos, to be in prisons. I mean, the percentage of blacks in the United States and in some cities and states in particular is just outrageous, as some of you know, who are in prison. But there's the outside the camp of lack of opportunity, education, money, and all that brings. Outside the camp. Who else goes outside the camp? In today's gospel story, Jesus goes outside the camp. He becomes so popular, he goes to deserted places where surely he met these people who had been sent outside the camp, and where everybody else flocked too, because they wanted to be close to Jesus. I can't help but anticipate the season of Lent today and say that Lent is a time where we all flock to be with Jesus outside the camp. We go to the deserted places. We wear ashes on our forehead, proudly proclaiming ourselves sinners. We might even go without our cell phones during... we celebrate in some ways, we proclaim with those ashes, sinner, sinner, I'm a sinner. 50 shades of sinners. We go with Jesus to be with others outside the camp. That's what our Burundi border barrio project is about. We have a great opportunity forthcoming where people from our community in Good Sam will be able to find a partner be hooked up with a partner in Burundi, people ages 18 to 35, to communicate with them regularly via Skype, Facebook, etc. And as a way to help with English perhaps, but for now I think it's more just a companionship. Our border outreach comes to new fruition next Sunday when Father Miguel from the Dominican parish in Mexicali will be here to lead us in a discussion after the 12:30 Mass of various border issues and how people on the border are living outside the camp. That parish is on the fringes of Mexicali, which in Mexicali means the more impoverished areas, as opposed to our inner cities have historically been impoverished. Burundi, border, and barrio, we're also on the cusp of uniting our various hunger ministries, Good Sam and the Newman Center. People will be able to more easily participate in various ministries and not just one of those hunger ministries, where we live on the borders with those without food, sometimes without even homes, and so many other things. So we go to the outside of the camp, to the desert, to the borders, with Jesus during Lent, to be with others. And we go there where food is scarce, especially chocolate. We fast and we fast. We discover in the desert, with this lack of food and perhaps lack of social media or television or other distractions or of bad habits, we discover anew our hunger for God. And that's what leads us to the Lenten practice of prayer, where we pray during Lent especially, help our unbelief. Father Miguel from Mexicali will be here next weekend as well, Sunday through Tuesday, for a Lenten mission, a Lenten whoop-de-doo, a revival. He'll be at the Sunday Masses, and then he'll be at that Burundi Border Barrio meeting, and then he'll be preaching again Monday and Tuesday evening for us to deepen our faith, to say to God, help our unbelief. So many ways in which we can, during Lent, go outside the camp to prepare for Easter, which is that 50 days of faith, 50 shades of faith, 50 shades of chocolate. And during this time of Lent and during this time of Easter, we grow to realize that this label, sinner, sinner, unclean, unclean, that's our badge of honor as Christians, to shout, sinner, sinner. Because, as we sing at the Easter Vigil, because of the sin of Adam. You about ready for a Win the Saints, you guys? Because the sin of Adam is a happy fault, we sing, because that's what brought us Jesus. Oh, when the sinners go marching in, I want to be in that number. Oh, when the sinners go marching in, oh, when the sinners go marching in, oh, I want to be in that number. When the sinners go marching in, when the saints, oh, when the saints go marching in, oh, when the saints go marching in.